Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today. And I am excited to have my guest visiting today. And I'm not sure exactly why, but for the first time ever, I'm remiss in the fact that I haven't had him on sooner, but now I've got a really excellent reason to have him on. And as we did last week, we're highlighting the M.E.N Summit that is coming up here on August 24th here in Parker, Colorado. And my guest today is going to be one of the featured speakers, and he's got an awesome talk that he's going to tease you with a little bit the information around. But before I get into introducing him, I wanted to just welcome some of the new guys to the Divorced Advocate community. Those are Zachary, Dan, Rich, and Neil. Welcome to the Divorced Advocate community. If you are not part of the community already, check out thedivorcedadvocate.com. We have all kinds of resources for you wherever you are in your divorce journey, and at whatever level you need. We have from free to paid resources. So check that out at the Divorced Advocate community. We would love for you to come on as a member of the community and start getting engaged and getting the support that you need and that you deserve. So check it out at thedivorcedadvocate.com. All right, my guest today is known as America's Breakthrough Sensei. Believing each of us can achieve breakthrough results in our personal and professional lives, we embrace the mind of a champion. After a 10-year career as corporate sales manager for the country's #1 consumer products company, he turned his attention to his real passion, transforming lives through martial arts and its leadership principles. So now for over 5 decades, he has been a dedicated student and teacher of the martial arts, achieving the rank of 8th degree black belt master instructor. And in 1999, he was the United States National Taekwondo champion. He now works as the leadership coach and professional speaker for inspiring business leaders and their teams to achieve breakthrough results through the qualities of black belt leadership. He's also the author of his latest Amazon #1 best-selling book, Breakthrough: 3 Winning Strategies to Create Breakthrough Results in Your Life, Business, and Relationships. Please help me in welcoming my friend, Chris Natzke. Chris, welcome.
Great to see you, brother. Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, man. And I can't believe that I haven't had you on the show. And I want to just first apologize for that, because you're one of the greatest dudes that I know. And so, and I've known you for quite a long time. The audience, I'll just say I used to take kickboxing classes at one of Chris's studios decades ago when I was married with my ex-wife, and I knew him back then, and now I know him in both of our post-marriage and divorce lives, and I guess kind of second careers, alternative careers in what we're doing now. So it's pretty cool. But before we get into, so your talk for the M.E.N Summit coming up on the 24th is Mentoring, Creating a Legacy of Hope for Future Generations, which, man, is just an awesome one. And I know that you, and I want you, first I want to ask you to just give a little bit of background around yourself, but in that, if you can also share the number, because you told me this one time when we were talking, the number of young men and women that you have taken to black belt status. It's actually mind-boggling, because of anybody that's been in martial arts knows what a process that is and how important it is, and what an achievement is. So if you can mix that into it, I mean, I want to brag for you, and I know that you don't just tell us a little bit about that and yourself.
Yeah, well, great. Well, thanks, Jude. It's so great to be here. And yeah, one of the things from a martial arts standpoint, I'm really blessed. I've been able to teach literally tens of thousands of students throughout the last 5 decades. But to the point that you just made, I have over 1,800 people, men, women, boys, and girls that I've guided through the level 2 black belt and beyond. And so for me, it's probably one of the pieces of my legacy that I'm proudest of, because that not only means that they were able to physically perform, but there was a transformation that occurred inside of them, that they were able to find a peace inside of them that brought confidence and assuredness and focus and respect and concentration, and really helping them be the best types of people they can be. So that to me is one of the parts of my legacy that I'm probably proudest of.
Yeah, which is, man, that's phenomenal, which gives you credibility in talking about creating a legacy of hope for future generations, because
Yeah.
you've literally for decades now been helping generations of young. I mean, you work with obviously a lot of young kids and young adults, and taking them through that process, and that's amazing. But before we jump in there, tell us a little bit about your background to outside of martial arts, and kind of your. I know that you went through a divorce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, going through divorce was probably the most devastating time of my life. And I say this not to sound trite, but I lost a brother in 1980 to a drowning accident. And that, of course, was incredibly difficult to go through. But when I compare those two circumstances, my brother's passing to going through divorce in the early 2000s, 2005 is when it was finalized. I really think that was probably the most devastating part thing that I've gone through. I had been with my now former wife since I was 16 years old. So, and at
Wow.
the time of our divorce, I was around 39 or 40 years old. So I really didn't know anything else really in my adult life than being with her. And we had two amazing boys together and built a business together. And for so many reasons, she was my best friend. And then that relationship began to come apart. And for me, it was a time in my life where I really had to step back and get honest with myself. I get honest with myself in terms of what I did to create that situation. I had to look at new ways of being apart from someone I'd been with for 26 years. There were so many things in my own personality and my own way of being that had developed with her by my side. And now all of a sudden I was on my own. And I realized that as many good things that happened in that relationship, there were also parts of me that didn't develop as a result of that. So I now had to lean into that as well. And the other part that was really important for me is really learning how to forgive. I can't imagine if I would have gone through that process. It's not to say that I wasn't mad, not to say that I wasn't hurt and resentful at times, but as I moved through that, realizing that in order for me to move to where I wanted to go and live the life that I wanted to, I really had to let go of a lot of those judgments and resentments. And, I'm here today. And, I feel that as much as I wouldn't want to go through that again, I'm really grateful that I did, because it helped me grow as a man, helped me grow as an individual, helped me grow spiritually. There were so many good things about even a closer relationship with my sons that I wouldn't want to do it again, but I'm glad that I'm happy I went through it.
Wouldn't choose to do it again. We would choose to get like we do to get into the gym to work out again and build our muscles.
Right.
But I liken it to that a lot of times. And I want to point out to the guys that are listening. So I've got a good friend, Brian Peters, who's been on the show before too. He's a former Mr. Universe, and he described the same thing you did, which is this was probably one of the, if not the hardest thing I've ever gone through was my divorce. And I literally just shut the blinds and shut myself in the house. And it is absolutely difficult and challenging. And, like, you're a strong man. Brian's obviously a strong man. I'm a strong man. So the guys listening that are going through the difficulties of this is common.
Yes.
This is absolutely common. But the story of hope, and maybe this can lead into your talk, is that life on the backside of this is absolutely amazing. if you do the work, like you talked about, forgiveness work, whatever else other work that you might need to be doing, to grow, like growing the muscle, right? If you're in there and you're doing it and you're doing the reps and you're working through it, if you work through this, there is hope on that backside.
There is. And, that's not to discount the pain that we go through when that occurs. And I'd really encourage your listeners, when you're in it, be in it. Many times as men in particular, we can try to push it down, push it away, anesthetize it through alcohol or whatever. I mean, all those things that we do to push the pain away. And as difficult as it is to lean into it, it's the best thing we can do for our growth, because that's where we come out on the other side. And, in my case, owning a martial arts studio at the time, that was quite large in terms of its number. We had probably 500 students at that location and families, et cetera. It was like being, I don't know, the king and the queen of our own little fiefdoms, right? So everybody knew what was going on. So there was that component as well. And quite honestly, man, if you could fog a mirror, I was going to tell you how much I was hurting at that time. And I'm not really proud of that. But at the same time is when I started to realize that it was okay for me to get that through and then choose not to stay in it, because I came to a realization, if I was going to stay there, I wasn't going to get anywhere. I needed to move beyond it. Just like if I had a student that was struggling on the road to black belt, they had to be able to face it and move beyond it as well.
Yeah, and that's a challenge in our society, because everything is structured to push it down, to ignore it, to numb it, et cetera. We literally, from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed, we could be distracted by everything and anything, which when we go through a divorce, we really can't. Like, there's just going to be stuff that's going to be in our faces that we've got to deal with, whether it's a court process or figuring out a new way in which you're parenting as a single dad, or whether that's more involved with the children or not having the children as much. Like, you're faced with stuff. So that's a great point, which is don't ignore it. Don't ignore any part of it. Be in it and do the work that you've got to do in order to get to that other side.
Absolutely. When you do have a standpoint of having children, I mean, one of the things that I'm most grateful for is my former wife and I, we had a pact with one another that we weren't going to have our boys be intermediaries for us, right? If we had issues with one another, we were going to handle them directly. To the best of our ability, we were going to keep the boys out of it. I mean, we were open in our communication with what was going on, but we weren't going to use them as go-betweens. And, one of the things that occurred in my situation is I was very, very sensitive, because my wife had found someone else. And that was the catalyst of our relationship breaking apart. And she moved away to Hawaii and wanted to take our youngest son with her. Now, to her credit, she decided that, that wasn't the best thing for him. But of course, there now was another guy in the picture. And I had felt it was very important for our youngest son to continue to have a relationship with her. So I was helping support financially him to go visit her several times per year. And my youngest son came back from a trip one time, picked him up from the airport, and we're driving in the car, and he's like 14, 15 years old. And he's like, "Oh, Larry took me on this hike to a waterfall, and Larry played basketball with me, and Larry did this, and Larry did this." And I'm literally gripping the steering wheel, right? My head's going to explode, but I really didn't want to say anything bad about him. And we get to a stoplight, and Jason looks at me, my youngest son. He looks at me and he kind of tilts his head and he goes, "You're my dad. You don't have to worry about anything. You're my dad." Oh, I'm telling you, Jude, one of the epic moments in fatherhood for me. And at that point, I realized, like, okay, I can get through this. I've got this relationship with my son. He loves me. He recognized me. I can get through this. And it was a huge turning point for me.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And for the guys that are struggling with maybe custody battles and parenting time, or not seeing their kids, just remember and know that you will always be their father. There's never going to be somebody that's going to be able to replace you. And that matters. That matters immensely, because every indicator in the world shows that your involvement in their lives, to whatever possible way, like whatever it is, it has the greatest impact on their lives. So, and that's just
100%.
an example of
Yeah.
what
And I
what
would just add to that, it's not, although I was blessed, Jason ended up living with me, but it's, it may sound trite, but it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality of time.
yeah
And
yeah
children yearn for that. And I learned that being a martial arts instructor, in addition to being a father, when I can make a connection with a young person and get them to believe in themselves and them to believe in me and have that relationship, that's where we developed some of our greatest black belts, because we
yeah
had kids that were yearning for that, just like I was, when I was yearning for it as I was growing up.
Right. And for the guys that aren't seeing their kids at all, or maybe not as much as they want, continue to keep that door open, continue to do whatever you can do, like you said, to keep that connection or stay connected, or do that, because you don't know what life circumstances are going to happen, what turns in the roads or twists are going to happen, to where then it's time for that relationship to maybe resume or deepen even more, which is one of the things that we also talk about, which is continue to do the work on yourself, so that if that's not happening at the present time, that you're ready for that when it does happen.
And I really believe that our children see us going through our process. I think it's important for them to see that, and they observe how we're doing it. And if we're doing it in a way where, even though it's painful, we're continuing to forge ahead, we are working on ourselves, there's a real honor and respect that develops in that regard too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, and let's turn to the talk on the 24th. The mentoring, and that M.E.N. is in the beginning for men, right? So and just let me remind the audience that didn't listen last week, is the men's summit coming up on the 24th is the Masculine Empowerment Network, and it's a group of guys that are coming together. And I'm gonna read right from the brochure here, Chris, just to remind them of what it is. And it's the network fosters healthy masculinity across communities and families through honest dialogue and mutual encouragement. And this event's going to examine men's issues and work towards solutions without political, religious, financial, or personal agendas. Men's challenges have never been greater than now, but great things happen when men rise up to lead their families and communities. And you are on this planet for a purpose, and you are not alone. So that whole mindset is around men and the importance of men. And each of you has a different topic that you're going to be speaking into. And yours is creating a legacy of hope for future generations, which is just huge, and obviously pertinent to the dads that are listening. So without sharing your whole talk, because we want guys to come
Exactly.
on the 24th at 8 a.m. To the talk, but take us a little bit through it. And then the hope stands for something, right?
It does. It stands.
Okay. All right.
And I'll explain a little bit about that too, but I won't give too much. But the reason that I chose this as a topic is, as I examine my own life, professionally, personally, spiritually, intellectually, etc., my life was absolutely transformed through the mentorship, particularly of my martial arts instructor. So I grew up in a household where my father was present. My parents did eventually divorce when I was 33, but my entire, life at home up until I went to college, he was there, but he wasn't really there fully because he dealt with his own demons of alcoholism. And so for me, my main male role model was my martial arts instructor. And an amazing man. You'll hear about him. I have my origin story, if you will, in my martial arts career. His name is Grandmaster J.K. Lee. And Grandmaster Lee had come from South Korea, and I didn't meet him until I was about, 13 years old. And but immediately there was this connection. And even though his English was poor, and he came from a totally different background of mine, I just felt this connection to him. And to me, he was this Korean Superman, right? He could fly through the air, he could break cinder blocks with his hand, et cetera, et cetera. But what he taught me is that there is a real power, not only in the physical realm of martial arts, but in the way of mentoring someone and showing them the love that a man can show a younger person. And even someone maybe just a little younger, and it doesn't have to be a youth, but it could be a young adult, etc., that it takes the time to make someone feel that they're of value and really help them understand the abilities that they have, the gifts that they have, and that he can help take them through that. So absolutely life-changing for me. So my way of being a martial arts instructor was so influenced not only from a technical standpoint of how to teach kicking and punching, but how to actually help people through their life journey. And that's really what this talk is about. It's basically, there's a lot of honoring to him, but what are the key lessons that I learned from him that we can actually do in our own lives as mentors, either for our kids or for younger adults in our lives?
God, what an awesome topic for the dads. And so, can you take us through what some of those
Yeah.
those tips are, or those topics are?
So creating hope for a legacy of hope for future generations. H.O.P.E is an acronym, and H stands for being heroic.
Oh,
It's one thing to me that many of us think that, well, there's no way I can be a hero, but we all know that the most ordinary people can become the most extraordinary beings just by stepping into challenge and being in the right place at the right time and choosing to step into that. And, we are a society that yearns for heroes. Just take a look at the box office results, particularly prior to COVID. And I think when I was researching this, the top 3 of the top 5 movies in 2019 were superhero movies, and 8 of the top 10 movies all had a heroic bent to them. Right? They were they had to do with this ability to move through obstacles and have someone be heroic for them. And so we're going to talk at length about my personal journey of having someone play that role for me, and then what are the specific ways that men can be that quote unquote hero for other men or boys, young adults in their lives. So that's what the H stands for.
We have as men. Are you seeing me here? Because
here we
are you
go.
Still hearing me?
See you? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're having some kind of interruptions here, but that's okay. I think it's still recording, so as long as they hear our voices, we're good. But that goes to our our masculine nature and our need for adventure, for purpose, which is inherent. And sometimes as dads, and we get in family life, we just kind of get lost in that. But if we can do some of the reframe, and I'm sure you're going to do a tremendous job of that in your talk, because you're just a master at well, you're a master in general, but you're a master at talking as well. Is reframing that into how that actually shows up, like you said, like in everyday life,
right,
as just dads, right, and not necessarily superheroes.
And wouldn't the And I have to say, I've had this experience with one of my sons saying this, and the ultimate to me is, imagine if one of your children said, "You know who my hero is? It's my dad."
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine that. So H stands for being heroic. O stands for being open-hearted. And I think that as men, some of our greatest gifts have to be with having strength and pushing through obstacles and being stoic and having difficulties come upon us and having the strength to help someone move through those obstacles. I think that's one of the absolute greatest gifts that we can bring as men in the world. And on the other side of that, it oftentimes means that men decide to press their feelings down and they don't express, and they don't communicate that things are tough for them and that they're having challenges. And see, the magic is when we are able to communicate that effectively and share that from our heart when we are going through difficulties, the people we mentor, our children, young adults, etc., they see that, and importantly, it gives them permission to do the same. I think so many difficulties that we have in society today have their origins with men who are deeply wounded, have never been able to express their pain in healthy ways. And as a result, it's been suppressed or repressed, and then it blasts out in very, very poor ways. And so
Yeah.
victims of that become their spouses or their estranged partners or their children or society. Those violent acts that occur happen, I think, as a result of a deep wounding. So when we're able to, like Brené Brown says, when you imprison the heart, you kill courage. You kill courage. You don't make it better. You kill it. And so by telling men it's okay to feel and express that, and particularly with the people that they mentor or the people that they're, the kids that they're parenting, to be able to express that, I think that's a superhero strength to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things that strike me about that is one, before you said, well, I would always share with anybody that would listen, all the pain that I was in, which I think is actually fantastic, because myself and a lot of other guys are the opposite, which is we won't share. Brian Peters, I mentioned earlier, he's like, I just repressed it all. Like, I just hid from all of it. So, that's absolutely, yeah, positively crucial to do that. And then we model it for our kids by being able to share with them, and model for them the fact that we are, open about, I'm sad today, and this is why I'm sad today. Not that you're putting it on them, right?
Right.
Because you got to be careful,
Exactly.
not that you're putting it on them, but you are sharing the fact that you are sad. I remember it was really, really hard for me to ever to let my daughter see me cry the first time. So, but after that first time, and then it happened again, and now they just tease me. They're like, "Are you going to get emotional, Dad?" Like, it's like on their birthday, and I pull out the pictures. They'll tease me. Are you going to get emotional? I'm like, I might get emotional. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. So, it's gone to the other end of the spectrum,
Well,
I think. But
and it's interesting too. When I was going through the worst of it for me, I could get emotional at the drop of a hat. It would just come out of nowhere, right? And I remember one summer, Jason, who was living with me, my youngest son, we decided we were going to watch all of the 3 or 4 Lethal Weapon movies together, right? That was going to be. And there's this scene in either the second or the third Lethal Weapon movie where Mel Gibson goes to the cemetery, and he hasn't been able to be in a relationship because, his wife died and he can't let her go, etc. And he goes to the cemetery and he talks to her and he says, listen, I got to let you go. And, there's someone else in my life now. And I see that. And the only thing that goes in my mind is, oh my God, I thought I was going to be with my wife until one of us died. And I literally lose it right there. And I go into the room and I compose myself, and I have to come out, and my son's looking at me, and I just had to say, hey, you know what? Sorry. It just overwhelmed me. And, I think he really understood that. But all I'm saying, the reason I share that story, and quite honestly, I haven't thought about that in years, is that it's okay when it happens. Don't press it down. Let it come up, because you are not only going to help yourself, but by extension, you're going to help the people around you by giving them the permission to do the same.
Yeah, what an awesome lesson for your son to be able to see
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have it come up, have a tool to deal with it, get yourself composed, and come back and say, okay,
Yeah.
and
It
then
wasn't
recognize it and talk about it.
totally. And it wasn't a Hallmark movie. It was Lethal Weapon, for crying out
Yeah,
loud.
yeah, no kidding. Right. Well, it's absolutely no. I remember when I was going through mine that always the exchange and the drop off for me with my daughters was the hard one, and and it's still, honestly, still the Fridays are still difficult for me, but I remember I just had to go, and you'd be at work, you might be getting ready for a meeting or what. I just had to go in the bathroom and sit in the stall for a minute or two, take some deep breaths, and just get things composed and come back in, right? And so we talk, and especially when we do some group stuff and private stuff, about just tools around how to do that, recognizing it comes up, it's okay, accept it. You might not be, if you can deal with it, then deal with it. If not, find a way to compose yourself, put it on the shelf, but don't leave it there. Come back to it later. So
100%.
Absolutely. Okay, what's P?
So P stands for persevering. I think as men, that is one of the gifts that we have to give in our mentoring relationships is the ability to be have obstacles, to sometimes overcome them, sometimes weather the storm, etc. I think that in today's youth, sometimes they don't see healthy examples of that. Oftentimes people can blame, they can project anger and resentment on others versus, hey, I'm in a tough situation, but I'm going to step forward. In martial arts, in Korean martial arts, we have a term called pil sung, and it means certain victory. And what that means is this ability to continue to move forward despite the obstacle that we have. And I think when we are able to demonstrate that in a noble way, right? We're going through our process. Things are difficult, but we're going to continue to move into this, and we're going to get on the other side, and we're committed to that. That gives this great example of fortitude, of perseverance, of strength, of humility, as we're able to do that. And one of the things, and I'll be sharing a story during this time of a student of mine that was going through some really difficult times, but his ability to persevere, like, even overwhelmed me at a boy of 17. And I'd like to think that I know that he had great parents that support him as well, and a community at home. But I'd like to think I had a little bit of part of that because he had confided in me as he was going through this journey. But to be able to play a role in someone's life in that way, even if it's small, and give them that hope, if you will, that there's light on the other side, and that going through difficult times is part of life, and being able to teach them that on an ongoing basis, I think that's a tremendous gift we can give to anyone, despite of our successes and failures, because it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
Like, I had a good friend of mine and coach tell me, he said, Chris, the things that you think are ordinary, other people think are extraordinary.
Right.
So you may be going through a time in your life and you've been past, you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You communicate that with someone and you show them how you were able to get on the other side. It might be the exact thing that breaks them open and lets them see that there's absolute light on the other end of this thing.
Yeah. And I feel like, and let me know what you think of this, that is one of the masculine traits, perseverance,
Right.
and that's not to say that women can't persevere, but that is one of the masculine traits that I feel dads exemplify and bring to a family, to a relationship, is that example of perseverance through
100%.
things.
100%. I think, and this is on very general terms, but oftentimes the mom can be the nurturer, right?
Right.
Dad's like, hey, come on, get up. We're getting on that bike again. Let's go.
Exactly.
And that's such a necessary component of our life to be able
Yeah.
to have that. And when, the thing about that too, is that when men are giving that back in that nature, it recycles itself so that they have greater fortitude in their lives. Does that make sense? I know
Yes.
when I was, and particularly as a martial arts instructor now, and when I was teaching full time, there was part of playing in that role made me step up to be the best that I could be, because I knew that I was being watched, that I was being observed, that I was being a role model. So I think I think that's part of our male journey. It's part of the hero's adventure, if you will, to slay the dragon. And I think that when we can impart that upon young people, particularly young men, now the next time things are difficult, and it can be very difficult for them, they can go, wow, okay, I can get through this chemistry class, or I can get through this breakup, or I can get through whatever it is, because they've got someone that's standing behind them that has their back.
Yeah. And divorce is at the epitome of persevering, for sure. So, again, that reframe of just getting through it and doing it and figuring out a way through it and doing it in a healthy and as less traumatic as possible way as you can do it with your kiddos is going to have immeasurable impact on them with what in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
So E is my last point, and it stands for expect the best. And
Nice.
I'll go back when I'm sharing my story on the 24th of a very pivotal moment with Grandmaster Lee, where he really claimed greatness for me. It was something I didn't really even know that I had inside of me, but the power of someone being able to establish that for you. And the distinction I'm going to make in this discussion is there is real power in holding someone accountable. And that's a real
Hmm.
buzzword in the world that I work in now, in the world of coaching. But what I
Yeah.
want to do is create the distinction with people about holding someone accountable versus holding them capable.
Yeah.
See, when you're holding someone capable, what you're doing is you're saying, I see greatness in you. You have expressed that's the greatness you want to live into. I'm going to hold you to that standard.
Nice.
And I'm going to expect the best of you in that. And I'm going to, even when you're going through difficult times, I'm going to remind you and I'm going to see you as the best you can be. One of the things when I owned my martial arts school is I would constantly tell my staff, when you have that new beginning student and you're working with them for the very first time, I want you to envision them as a black belt. You're going to come from that place in terms of teaching. And quite honestly, people come into martial arts in all different ways of coordination and focus and
Right.
physical fitness, etc. But I got to tell you, Jude, some of the best black belts I ever developed were the ones when they walked in that door, you could think there's no way they're going to make it through. But they kept showing
Interesting.
up. And by being in an environment where people would hold them to that standard, they started to see it themselves. So that's what we're going to do in the last part. So bringing those all together, being a hero, be open-hearted, teaching others to persevere, and then expecting the best out of them. That to me are the four keys to being a mentor.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And on that last point is just something we do not hear enough. And actually, I think we've kind of gotten away from and off track about too. And even in the therapeutic world and whatnot, the whole philosophy it's of you're okay, it's okay, you know, live your bliss, whatever all these
Right.
slogans are out there, which there's some credibility to it, but not with the absence of what you just talked about, which is expecting the best, living up to expectations. When you set expectations, people you will usually live up to those expectations,
100%.
especially children, right? If you've
Absolutely.
got expectations for them, then they're going to strive to meet those. Just kind of like if we have expectations set in our lives or with our jobs or whatever it might be, we're going to strive to meet those expectations. And even if you don't, and you call them capabilities, right, to your capabilities, like living up to your capabilities, even if you don't, you're moving forward and you're excelling and you're achieving and you're
Right.
going, like you've got that direction. And again, this is a masculine design, that the way that we're designed to approach life.
Absolutely. Well, I'll share a little story that I share with some of my students. I right now, because of my role in our martial arts organization, a lot of the students I don't see until they're getting ready to test for their black belt. And in the 12 weeks prior to their black belt test, in fact, we have a black belt testing this Saturday. I take them through like for 12 consecutive Saturdays where they're training directly with me. And a lot of times, many of them are meeting me for the first time. And when I'm giving corrections and I'm giving, constructive feedback, et cetera, you can see them kind of withdraw inside, or they're a little freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I wanted to tell you this story. So I was fortunate enough to play Division I college football. I know you were a Division I hockey player,
Right.
so you got that together. And so I
Yep.
played at Northwestern University, and it was my summer of fall camp. In fact, my gosh, as I think of it now, that was 40 years ago, like this week. But anyway, I'm not old. But anyway, it's my first year of fall camp, and I'm playing inside linebacker, which means the responsibility of the linebacker is to call the defensive front. So the offensive comes out and they've got receivers on either side, and you're telling the defensive line where they need to line up. And I'm like, my head's just exploding because I've got all this stuff rattling around. I'm trying to learn a new system. I'm 18 years old, and I totally screw up a play, just totally screwed up. And as soon as the play finishes, my coach, Mike Church, starts screaming at me, Natzke, ah! He starts screaming at me. And I've been in environments where I gotten chewed out before, but for whatever reason, I give him stink eye, you know? And I realize now that I wasn't really mad at him. I was mad at myself. But I give him
Yeah.
the stink eye, I just glower at him. And so he nonchalantly walks over on the sidelines to him and he puts his arm around him and he says, Hey, Chris, I want you to know one thing. When I stop yelling at you, that's when you need to start worrying, because then I don't care anymore.
That's a good one.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I always tell my students, I'm like, hey, if I'm giving you feedback, You need to be thanking me, and I'm doing it because I care. And I think
Right.
as mentors, expecting the best when we are giving straight feedback, there are times for attaboy. And then there's other times for, hey, you got to straighten up here. It's coming from love. It's coming because we care. And some of my best
Right.
coaches were the ones that did exactly that.
Yeah. Awesome story. So, guys, come and listen to Chris talk on August 24th. I'm just going to share a little bit, Chris, about what this event is. It's going to be honest dialogue, honest questions, personal challenges, usable tools and frameworks, inspiring stories, and other brothers, dads, and men working beside you. It's going to be an awesome event. There's going to be Chris and so many other guys sharing more. It's Saturday, August 24th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And the website to get tickets is menempowerment.net. That's MENEMPOWERMENT.net. So please check that out. And then also, Chris, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, we didn't talk about your coaching and what you do with men, but Chris is a phenomenal coach. And if you haven't been able to figure that out in the 40 minutes that we've been talking, just a world of wisdom and feedback, and just amazing. Where can they get a hold of you?
Well, easy to get a hold of me. Then go to my website, chrisnatzke.com. That's CHRIS, N as in Navy, AT, Z as in zebra, KE.com. And I actually have an upcoming program. I'm opening up a men's coaching program on September 17th. So if you go to the top of my website,
Nice.
It's called the Breaking Through Coaching Program. You can check that out. And one thing I wanted to add about our event on the 24th, Jude, if I may, is there's a ticket price for men, but there's a discounted ticket price if they want to bring their sons ages 13 to 18, because we'd love to have the father-son connection there. So please take advantage of that if it works.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We could talk for another 2 hours, but I'm sure I'm going to see you again soon here.
Right on, brother. Thanks so much.
Take care.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.